Are you wondering how to set up your RV at your campsite? We're about to show you the step-by-step instructions of what we do for our 2021 Intech Sol Horizon. All right, so the first thing that you're gonna do when you are setting up camp is come and check in. Usually it's gonna be a visitor center, at a KOA, it might be an office or a store that you're checking into. Somewhere you're probably gonna have to stop and check in. If you are the co-pilot, this is the time when you need to make sure that you've got your shoes on. You've got the dog that might have been sleeping in your lap, woken up. You've got the laptops put away. Get ready for getting to your campsite. You don't want to get to the campsite and then hold up traffic by trying to get all of that stuff taken care of. All right, when you drive up to your campsite, you need to take just a few seconds and really slow down and scope things out. Every single campsite is going to be different. The way that you pull into it is going to be different. The leveling situation, everything is going to be changed. So you really do need to take that time to scope it out. Otherwise, you're going to just be getting frustrated by doing something over and over again that you could have prevented in the first place. So in our case, pulling into site number 44 here at Vogel State Park, we had to pull into the campsite across from us to get straightened out to be able to then back across the road and into the campsite. So you always have to think, if you need a little bit more room, you don't have to be just on the road. If there is some room to maneuver in a campsite across from you, without getting too close to a rig, go ahead and do that. Again, I can't stress this enough, don't rush at this point. You don't want to make a mistake, you just need to be level-headed. Now, when Daniel does the driving, I hop out, and as the co-pilot, I am helping him figure out where he's going to be backing up and what to avoid. So when you get out of the vehicle, if you are helping somebody doing the backing up, ask them what you should be looking at. They might be more concerned with one side of the truck and you might be focusing on something else. So you can't be in all places at once. You really do need to kind of pick a place that you're going to keep your eyes on the most. For us, because the Sol has a shorter tongue, we have to be really careful with not getting the back of the truck too close to the window. So that's always a concern that I'm looking at. Also, when we were backing up into this site, was making sure that he wasn't on a trajectory to hit this wall. Obviously trees everywhere, every site's going to be different. We've been in sites where there was like laundry poles that we had to avoid, picnic tables that were in the way. On the other side, we have trees that we needed to really avoid. And then you just want to be sure that the driver is able to get backed up straight as possible. Again, we got backed up straight as possible, and then after Daniel got out of the truck and looked at it, realized we wanted to be closer to the electric pole and the water pole. So he kind of pulled out again, and then backed up straighter to be by those poles. So it's not necessarily always going to be a one and done thing. You kind of do have to always try to get into the site, put it in park, walk around the site, see what you got to do, get back in, try again until it's perfect. We also get asked a lot, do you need walkie-talkies while backing up? Our experience with walkie-talkies has not been great, although a lot of people do enjoy using them. We have also tried calling each other on the phone and using that as commands while backing up. However, while on the phone, all the backup noises and the truck going, doing its thing actually kind of cut out our audio, and that didn't work. So what we find works really good is just yelling and trying to get close to the driver with the driver's side window down and giving a sense of direction. What you don't want to do as the helper is to just be sitting in the back like pointing or like talking gently. That's not going to help them out at all. You need to be really verbally loud and big gestures and things like that. And don't be surprised if you need to use a little bit of another campsite in front of you in order to angle in. Sometimes it's just not that easy to be on the road and try to curve back into the campsite. You might need to go a little bit into the campsite in front of you. You might need to just take a few different passes to try to get in. Above all else, just don't rush this aspect of getting into your site. You don't want to be frustrated, and you don't want to do any damage to your rig because you didn't slow down, calm down, and think it through.
Okay, once you get to your site, one of the first things you want to do, at least one of the first things I do, is to see how level your site is and how level your trailer is. So what I do is I bring my trusty level from the house, and on ours I've also installed a two-way level. I just silicone that onto the frame. Now it's not as accurate as the one that I have in my hand, the yellow level, but it is a nice guide that helps you when you don't want to bring this out of the truck. So one of the first things I do is I just check the cross level of the trailer, and as you can see, it's tipping a little bit. So we're going to want to bring the left side or the driver's side of the trailer up just a little bit. So we'll show you that in just a few minutes. And then just as a point of reference, before I unhitch from the truck, I always take a look and see how level we are before we unhitch. So this is pretty good level front to back. So really the only leveling we need to do right now, once they unhitch, is from side to side. So in our case, we just need to level a little bit from side to side, passenger side to driver's side of the trailer. So what I'm going to do, knowing how my trailer is, I'm only going to use one leveling block. I know we just need to come up a few inches on that side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the leveling block, and in this case I'm going to put it in front of the tire of the side. This is the driver's side of the trailer. And then before you unhitch the trailer and before you block off the wheels of the trailer, I'll just drive up on this and it should bring it up to where it needs to be.
All right, so I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any reason that you would put it behind the wheel as you're backing up on it?
It really doesn't matter either way.
Okay.
In this case, I know our site slopes towards the front of the site, so it's just easier. Gravity will be helping me pull forward just a little bit.
And if you had to put like 2 or 3 up there, is there a point where you would ever have like 3 of them? Like, could you actually drive up on that easily?
Yeah. So if you have to do more than one, that's the beauty of these. If you have to do more than one, then you want to build up and you want to interlock those like that. So what you do is you build like your own little ramp using the leveling blocks. So if we had to go up really high, see how it builds up a little ramp,
Yeah.
and then you can put the tire on that.
So if you needed that height of 3, you would actually use much more than 3
Right.
of these, but you would want to interlock them for sure so they
Right.
don't slide while you're driving on them.
And that's the thing, that's when you're leveling your trailer, you want to go slow because these do sometimes have a tendency to shift on you. So that's just something to keep in mind.
And if you needed to level it on the other side too, you would just be backing up on whatever configuration you have over there at the same time.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in and say, if you're having more than those blocks that you're putting on, like more than one, and you have like a whole step system, a lot of times it's nice for the co-pilot, so to speak, the one that's out here helping, to let the driver know exactly when the tire is centered on that top block, because they don't know. So it's really helpful if you can be out here and let them know that.
Okay, the next thing you want to do once you're leveled out side to side, the next thing you want to do before you unhitch your trailer from the truck is put in your chocks, because the last thing you want to do is have the trailer rolling during or after or while you're unhitching from the truck. So we're going to do that now. And you want to do this on both sides. Make sure they're tight in there. Make sure they fit snugly underneath the tire.
So you want them snugly, but they don't necessarily have to be wedged really, really tightly underneath the tire?
No, you just want to give them a nice little tap just to make sure they're in there tight. Okay, now that we're leveled from side to side and we've blocked off the trailer so it's not going to roll anywhere, now it's time to unhitch from the truck. So when I always bring some leveling blocks, any extras that I have that I didn't use when leveling the trailer, I put those underneath the front of the tongue jack. And that just helps so that you can not need to fully extend your tongue jack. And it's going to depend by site how much you need to raise and lower your tongue jack. So that's why it's a good idea to check how level you are from front to back on the trailer.
And then just spin it down.
Spin it down. Just so it relieves some of the pressure slightly off the hitch. Next thing you want to do is unhook your 7-pin connection from your truck. We have a weatherproof covers on ours that we suggest using. Just tuck that away for the time being. Okay, the next thing we want to do is unhook the emergency brake release from your truck that's connected to the trailer. Okay, and all I do is wrap it around the front here, just so it's not dangling and hanging all over the site. Okay, the next thing I do is I undo the hitch clasp here and pull that up.
And you just leave that there?
I just leave that there for the time being.
Okay, so before you start moving that down, so we don't have this completely on the blocks yet.
Right.
Okay.
So now we're going to raise it up just a little bit so it starts to raise the trailer off the hitch. Now, one thing to notice is I still have the chains connected to the trailer and the truck. That's just in case something, if our emergency brake on our truck would fail or the chocking on the trailer would fail, at least the two are still connected in some manner before I release this. So continue raising your tongue jack so that the pressure is released off your hitch ball. Sometimes it gets stuck in there. There we go. Depending on what your travel day has been like, if you've been going up and down a lot of hills and curves, sometimes it does get stuck like that, just a little bit.
So if we hadn't just been going up tons of hills and curves and you were raising
Right.
it wouldn't need that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now that you can see that we've raised the tongue at least an inch or so above the toe ball, now that that's set, the trailer's chucked off, it's not going to go anywhere. Now it's time to remove the towing chains from the truck. And in my case, what I do is I use a zip tie to just tie up the chains. That way they don't drag the ground, they don't destroy the chains, etc.
And that's how we drive with it.
Right. And it being just a zip tie, any amount of pressure is going to break this, just in case something happens. Okay, just undoing the chains from the truck's hitch. Alrighty, and that's it.
Okay. Do you just leave them sitting there like that, or?
I leave them sitting there like that for now. So what I'm going to do now is pull the truck forward about 2-3 feet, so that gives us room so we can lower it a bit. So one thing we've recently purchased is a Hitch Lock. This is great when you're traveling or if you're storing your trailer in long-term storage. This is something we recently got. It's from Lock. It's a company in Canada that specifically makes this type and this size of hitch lock for this size trailer's hitch. And this is just something that's kind of belt and suspenders that we like to do once we get to a campsite. So I'll put this on before we level the trailer from front to back.
So you have to put a key in first?
Yeah. Pull that out. That releases that.
Ah.
And then what you do is you put this up into your hitch receiver. You slide the lock back down in there. And then this slides on the front of the hitch. once you lock it in there, there you go. That's not going to go anywhere.
Awesome. So how do you know that it's locked with the key? Do you just feel it kind of like catch?
Yeah,
or...
the key, the cylinder goes all the way up flush against the bottom of the lock. And once you know that's flush and you turn it and it doesn't drop, then that's when you know it's secure. And then once that's locked, then I just put this back in there just so it doesn't get lost, etc. You could, if you wanted to, put another padlock on there, but in this case, since we have this pretty bulletproof hitch lock, we don't need this. I just put this here so it doesn't get lost. The next thing I do is I just get the chains out of the way so they're not dragging the ground, and just flip them up and over like that. And there you are. That gets the chains, that gets the 7-way hitch connection, that gets the emergency brake, etc. That gets it all the way, it's all off the ground, etc.
Good job.
Okay, now that we've locked down the hitch, we've put up the chains, etc. We've put away the 7-way connection, got that weatherproof for the time being. Now we want to level the trailer from the front to the back. So you bring out your trusty level, or you could use the onboard mounted level that we installed. Put that on there, and now we can lower this back down. I do it slow just so the leveling bubble has a chance to reset. Get close. This would go faster if you had a mechanical hitch jack, but in our case our trailer's small and we don't really need one, to be honest. Okay, that's it. That's pretty close. Now we're level from front to back. And on this hitch, on this level, I put a couple of extra guide marks that tell me where that bubble should be, and that's just because when this was mounted, it got slightly off level. So I have 2 hashtag or tag marks there.
With a Sharpie.
With a Sharpie that I use. But I also check it with my trusty carpenter's level.
All right, so I'm going to ask a newbie question. So you have this on the blocks. You were sitting there, you were putting it up to get the hitch ball off. Then you were doing it again to level it. So it has nothing to do with this moving off of the blocks. It's just a matter of it going up and down, and you're not actually going to see anything moving down here.
Not necessarily. You'll see this gap between the fixed portion of the tongue jack and the shaft that actually moves up and down. You'll see that gap either get greater or less depending on how level you are.
So that's what's moving, not the base of it.
This stays stationary. This shaft here connected to the base plate, that's what actually moves up and down.
Okay.
So this is a cutout tennis ball. This is kind of the homemade version. I just put this on the top of the hitch jack. That helps just in case when I'm backing up the truck and I lower my tailgate. That way the top of the tailgate will hit this and not chip the paint on the tongue jack. And that's going to vary depending on your rig setup and how long your tongue is on your trailer. Okay, next thing you want to do, once you are leveled off, if you were chucked off, the trailer's not going to go anywhere. It's level from side to side. If your trailer has stabilizing jacks, you want to lower those now. So what we're going to do, what I do is I just use a 3/4 bit attached to my cordless drill, and that just makes it a little bit quicker. So in our trailer, these are not leveling jacks. These are merely stabilizing jacks to keep the trailer from rocking a little bit back and forth when you're in it, when you're stationary. What you want to do is you want to put it down and just snug it up a little bit. You don't want to start raising and lowering the trailer with these. These are merely just to be snugged up so your trailer doesn't move. There you go. Now our trailer does come with a hand crank that you can do this by hand, but in this case it's just quicker with a cordless drill and a 3/4 inch socket. There you go. So one thing to consider when you're lowering your stabilizing jacks is, before you lower it completely, just take a quick glance and see what's underneath. Sometimes there can be some large rocks, etc., that will just throw off, you know, the placement of the pad of the stabilizing jack. Like for example, this rock here might get in the way, so I just move that out of the way real quick before I fully lower it. Okay, the next thing that I do, it depends on you and your personal preference. Once I get the trailer locked down, leveled, and stabilized, you can either do your electric connection to shore power if your site has it, or you can do your water connection or your sewer connection depending on your site and what type of hookups you have. So in our case, we have a portable surge protector that we use. Some trailers come with surge protectors built into the trailer, many don't. So we have this surge protector. It's from Southwire. It's a surge guard. It's meant for 30 amp. Our trailer is a 30 amp surface, and this is one of the first things that you want to do before you hook up your trailer to the shore power. What you want to do is check the circuit of the shore power connection at your campsite first. Okay, before you hook up your trailer to the shore power, you want to test the circuit of your shore power connection. So what you do, you come to the box. In our case, we have a 30 amp service. This is a 30 amp rated surge protector. What you want to do is connect it into the 30 amp connection first. Make sure the circuit's off when you're doing this. And again, do not connect your trailer shore power to this first. Again, we're just checking the circuit of this first, which will tell us if it's a good circuit or not. So once it's connected, then you turn on the proper switch. And in this case, for this surge protector, you want to see 2 green lights here, and you want to see a green light there. That says that this circuit is clean, and it doesn't have any issues, it's not going to ground, etc. Okay, once we've checked the circuit, and we know that it's good, I turn it back off, and now we connect our shore power to the trailer.
All right, but I have a question first. So how do you know which thing to flip inside there? There was like 3.
So they're usually in line. In this case, so this is your 15 or 20 amp circuit, so that's 20 amp.
Okay.
In this case, this is kind of interesting because this campsite has 2 30 amp connections.
Yeah,
usually it's either a 50 amp or a 30 amp, or maybe just a 30 amp, or maybe just a 50 amp. So they line up with the various circuits that way.
And they're always going to be like, are they generally labeled like that?
They should be, yes.
All right, but generally, even if they're not labeled, will it be in the position of the plugs underneath them?
It should be, yes.
Should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing you want to make sure is before you do any of this, make sure all 3 circuits are off, or all the circuits are off. Sometimes people leave, they get busy, they forget to turn these off. The best thing to do is come in here before you connect anything, make sure they're turned off. We've checked the circuit with our surge protector. We know that the circuit's good. Now you can connect your trailer to the shore power using your 30 amp or 50 amp cord, depending on the amperage of your trailer. So what I do first, again, is I make sure that all the circuits are turned off. Now I plug this into the surge protector first, make sure that's seated nicely, make sure that's a snug connection. And again, we don't want to turn that on just yet. We want to connect our trailer to this first, and once everything's connected, then we'll come back and turn this on. Okay. Now we're going to connect the female end of the shore power cord to our trailer. You slide this in, you have to line it up just a little bit, and then you want to give it about 1/8 or 1/4 of a turn to the right. That gently locks that in, and once you feel that tight and it can't move, then you spin the dial here and make that final connection. And that's it. Now we are hardwired to the shore connection, and again, there's still no power on. Now that we're fully connected, the circuit's been tested, now we're going to go turn it on. And in this case, since we're using the middle 30 amp outlet, we'll turn on the middle 30 amp breaker. And there you go. It's always good to check your surge protector to make sure the circuit's still good and we're good to go. Okay, one thing I like to do is kind of a belt and suspenders, is I like to lock up my surge protector to the power pole. That's just something we do. These surge protectors, the one we have, for example, is about $230. So again, you know, most campsites, most campgrounds are pretty safe places, but you never know, things can go walking. So I just take a braided cord strand here with a padlock. And in our case, our surge protector comes with a metal ring that is meant to assist you if you want to lock down your surge protector. So
is that one of the reasons we got this surge protector?
That's one of the reasons. So all I do is I feed this through there like that. I pair these up, and in most electrical outlet boxes have a tab here that can be locked. So in this case, all I do is put the two ends. It's looped through the connection on the surge protector. Put those on there like that. And then I come to the box and lock that down. Now I just lock that down during the duration of our stay. I keep it on there all the time, and then right before we break down the site, I'll take that off.
And where can one get rope like that? Is that something special order, or?
It's you can find it on Amazon. Harbor Freight has those. Many Harbor Freights have those. It's a pretty simple and standard thing, and they come in varying thicknesses and sizes. I like the smaller one because it will fit through the factory provided metal loop on the surge protector. Okay, now that we have the trailer hooked up to shore power, what I like to do is I like to go inside and change the refrigerator from propane or 12 volt, depending what you use going down the road. Opinions vary on that. So what I want to do now that we're hooked up to permanent power, I want to go ahead and change the refrigerator to electric, which makes it run off shore power. Okay, so everyone's refrigerator is going to be slightly different. Our refrigerator is a Dometic. It runs off either shore power, propane, or 12 volt. And in our case, this particular refrigerator does not automatically switch once it senses permanent shore power. In our case, our refrigerator, you have to come in and manually switch it. So you can see it was on propane before, and now we're just going to change it to shore power. You put that on there and hold it, and there you go. So it just switched off propane to shore power.
And it'll continue to keep the settings that you had it on before. You don't have to like do any reset of those.
Correct, yes. Okay, now that we have hooked up our trailer permanently to shore power, the next thing I like to do is either do the domestic water connection, or if your site has it, do your sewer connection. In our case, our site today only has power and water, so the next thing we'll be doing is the domestic water connection. Okay, one thing you also probably want to get when you're RVing is a water pressure reducer. Depending on which site you go to, the water pressures might vary greatly across the various campgrounds and campsites you visit. And because trailers have very pristine plumbing systems, you want to be very careful with those plumbing systems. Again, these are not the same type of plumbing systems are in your house where you have copper line or PEX. This is plastic plumbing system. Again, it's meant to be used for temporary uses, and you want to make sure that the pressure going into that system inside your trailer is at least no more than 40 psi, and that's what this little connection does. It's a separate piece. You can get these at Camping World, you can get this on Amazon. There's various types of brands that make these. I like the brass one. It's just a little more sturdy. And again, it reduces the water pressure coming out of the spigot, which in some cases could be 60 or 80 psi, and it reduces it down to a more usable 40 to 50 psi, which is the pounds per square inch that your trailer is really designed for.
We could put a link to the one we use in the comments.
Yes. So I like to put this on the end of the hose. Make sure that's tugged off slightly. Snug there. The other thing I like to do, simply because of the way that our trailer is set up, Every domestic water connection on travel trailers is going to be different. Ours is a little unique in that it works best when you have another flexible connection on the end of the hose. And I'll show you just in a few minutes why.
And we got this on Amazon, right?
Yes.
And we can put that link below too.
Yes. So we have a 2021 Intech Sol Horizon. In our case, our domestic water connection is on the driver's side of the trailer. It lives behind this little door here. And in our case, you have the domestic water fill, which goes to our fresh tank, or you have your shore power water connection. And you can see now why I like to use this flexible connection. And that's because the angle of our shore water power connection is a little angled, it's a little odd. Many of them are straight, parallel, and flush to the trailer. In our case, it's slightly angled down. So that's why I like to use this flexible connection coming out of our trailer.
Because otherwise the hose would be kinked.
It could be kinked, and there's not a lot of room in there to make the male to female connection. And also what this also does, as you can see, this is flexible and has a little spring on it. It also helps reduce some of the weight of the hose dragging on this connection. These connections aren't super strong, so you want to be careful with these connections. Again, this is all just going into plastic, so you want to be careful not to have a lot of weight pulling down on this connection. And that flexible hose helps relieve some of that pressure and the weight from the hose. So once that's connected, then I take the male end of the hose, which has the water pressure reducer on it, and you just connect that. Make sure that's snug. Give that a good twist to make sure that's snug. Make sure that's snug. Now we should be good to go.
So just to let people know, this is if you want the water coming in continuously, or yeah, just connect. But if you were not wanting to have the hose out all the time, you would fill up your water tank right there.
This connection is the fill for your freshwater tank on board your trailer.
And you wouldn't necessarily need all the connectors and the pressure regulators and everything if you were just going to be using the hose, putting it in there and filling it up.
In that case, you could remove everything from this point forward on the hose. Just take the end of the hose and stick it in there, and once it fills, usually there's an overflow valve,
and it'll come out
and
of
water
that.
soaked out, and that's when you know that your fresh tank is full.
Okay. And then what about needing a bigger water hose? Because everybody says you need huge ones. Other people say you never need an extension. Do we have an extension? Do we have a long one?
We do. So this is a 25-foot hose. This is a pretty standard hose. What I like to do is I carry an additional 10-foot section of white potable water domestic water hose with this, and you might not need to use it every time, but in the cases and in the situations and the campgrounds where you need it, it's a lifesaver, because not every campground is created equally. Your connections, your electric power pole, and your domestic water connections might be located in different locations along the length of your site. So in many cases, I've seen the power back here and the domestic water connection all the way at the front of the site. And we have a 20-foot 30-amp cord, which is kind of the limiting factor. You can get extensions for these, but they're pretty expensive. I'd rather pay a few bucks and get an extension for the domestic water hose instead.
How many times have we used our extension? Not that often, right?
Probably 4 times.
But when we did have to use it, they were pretty far apart.
They were very far apart, yeah. The next thing I like to do, just because that's how I am, I like to tuck in all the remaining slack of the domestic water hose and the shore power cord. I like to tuck it underneath the trailer, just so it reduces any tripping hazards. It also helps keep your domestic water line out of the hose. If you're in a campsite that's out west where it's hot, it's in the sun all day, and you want to come in and you want to have nice cold water, that hose is going to heat up in the middle of the day. So any additional length of hoses you can keep in the shade really helps.
So you want to keep the domestic water line out of the sun?
If you can. It's not always feasible, but it's just nice to have. Okay, now that we have the water line hooked up to the trailer and to the spigot, I've checked all the connections to make sure they're tight. Always give one more tug just because sometimes these can be a little finicky. Now you want to turn on your spigot to feed fresh water to your trailer. I always turn it on full force and then let the water pressure reducer maintain the right PSI going into the trailer.
So what would you do at this point if you see water running out of any of these parts of the hose? Is that something that you just let it be? Do you restart from the beginning and see if there's a tighter connection?
Yeah, what you'd want to do is you'd want to turn off the water to wait for all the water pressure to reduce, and then come back and take this off and check your O-ring that's inside these connections. Sometimes they get dried out, they get smashed, they get mushed, you know, they get dried out, they'll shrink sometimes. And in our case, I always carry a few extra with us when we RV, just in case that happens.
After the water has been hooked up, if you want hot water, be sure to put on the water heater for electric. There is a water heater gas as well. That's going to be quicker. But then obviously it's going to use up your propane. So if you're okay with waiting just a few minutes, go ahead and put on the electric.
So we have a 2021 Sol Horizon. And in our case, we have a front cover that protects the glass on the front of the trailer. So to remove that, you're just going to go around and unsnap all the snaps first. And then simply you just slide the cover out from the channel at the top. And it can go at either side. And that's it. That reveals your front glass on your Sol Horizon.
And where do you put this?
In our case, I fold this up gently and just put this in the back in the bed of our truck. Next, let's talk about propane setup in an RV. Now, we have a 2021 Sol Horizon, and our two propane tanks live behind the front panel just behind our tongue jack. To open up the panels, simply pull the two clasps, pull off the panel gently off the two pegs, and that will reveal our two 20-pound propane tanks. Now with two propane tanks, we have the option to toggle between one or the other tank, and that's simply done by the regulator in the middle. Currently, as the regulator knob is pointed up and down or north and south, that means both are shut off. To choose one tank over the other, simply turn the knob so that the arrow points to the tank that you want to use. Then on top of the tank, open up the valve on that tank only. Now in our case, our regulator does not automatically change between the two tanks. We have to manually switch it between our two tanks. Different regulators are different on different RVs, so keep that in mind. To shut off the propane, simply turn off the valve at the top. And then flip the switch back so that it's vertical or that the arrow is pointing up and down. To change it to the other tank, simply move the lever over pointing to the opposite tank, and then you can use that tank by opening up its valve on top. Okay, now we're going to show you how to bring out the awning. We have a manual awning. It is a Thule crown awning. So let's show you that now. First, what you want to do is take the pole that is provided with your awning. You want to slide it up into the slot, and you want to give it about a quarter turn until you feel it grab, and so that it hangs freely by itself. And then you want to start cranking out the awning slightly. And because this awning is not self-supporting, this awning does need the provided legs to support it. So you want to bring the awning out about 2 feet, 2.5 feet. Let the pole hang in there. And then you want to bring out the poles that are provided on the awning. Bring them like that. And then you want to lift the lever here that's on the side, because you want to self-support this awning as you're bringing it out. And then we can adjust these legs later. Just bring that out, rotate that down, pull down this. And what I do is I just put them down like that, ever so slightly. Lock this in. And we'll adjust the length of these later, but you need this self-supported while you're bringing out the awning. Now that both legs are out, now you can crank out the awning to the desired depth that you want it. Now what I do, now you see the awning is partially the way out, what I do is I now adjust the legs to the right height. Just undo that. Drop the legs down a little bit and then lock it back in place. And we'll do the same on this side. Slightly drop down the awning. And then we'll bring it out the rest of the way. Okay, and that's it. So the awning is out as far as we'd want. They do provide stakes that will go into the bottom of these, and in just a second we'll show you how that's done. So with your awning, you'll be provided 2 tent stakes that you can use to anchor your legs into the ground. And I just gently take them. You can put them on either side. There's 2 holes on either side of the tent stake. I just take one, pick a hole, and then drive it into the ground. And that's really about it. You can put it all the way in if you need to, but really it just needs to be in there tight enough so that if the wind comes along, it just helps keep it stable and keeps the leg from moving around. So once you have your awning out and it's staked down, you can either leave the pole in, or if you want to just take it out and just to give it a quarter turn, slide it and just drop it out, and you can put this back in the basement. Next, let's talk about setting up the sanitary sewer connection from your RV to your campsite sewer connection. As you can see here, I use a portable sewer hose ramp that is helpful in providing a positive slope from the trailer to the sewer hose connection. The order in which you do these steps isn't really that important. It's more about making sure that you have good connection on the hoses and the fittings. So first I'm putting the 90-degree elbow that goes into the campground sewer connection. Typically this is a 3 or 4 inch connection. Next, I'm going to make sure that the gate valve on our RV's black and gray tank is closed before opening up the exterior hatch. Now I'm going to put on our clear angled elbow fitting that comes out of the gray and black tank dispense. Next, I'm going to connect our 2 hoses to the 2 fittings that I just put on. Here it's important to make sure that the fittings and the clasp of the fitting connect firmly. To make these fittings connection, you simply put the grooves into the correct position, the male and female position of the connections, and give a slight turn until it clasps firmly. As I'm doing this, you can see how I'm putting the sewer hose down the temporary ramp that we have. Again, this helps provide a positive flow from the trailer to the campsite sewer connection. One tip is the 90-degree elbow that goes into the campground sewer connection. Sometimes you need to put a weight or a rock on top of that just to make sure that the weight of the hose and the weight and spring to the hose keeps it firmly attached. In our case, I have a black tank flush valve that's attached to our angled connection that comes out of our trailer. This helps when it's time to clean out the black tank after each dump. Simply put a non-potable water hose into this connection. And just as a reminder, you do not want to use your potable drinking hose for this effort. As you can see on the Campground's domestic water, I use a splitter that helps provide a connection to our domestic water hose and to the garden hose that I use to hook up to our sanitary hose connection. Next, once everything's connected, simply pull open the gate valve on the black and gray tank and let the tanks empty using gravity alone. The clear fitting here helps so you can see how much effluent is coming out of the tanks and if the tank is nearly empty. Once the tank is empty, then I turn on the water hose and allow a jet of water to shoot back up into our gray and black tank. This helps remove and clear any free debris that's hanging in the tank. After doing this for a few minutes, then I'll turn off the hose and let that water drain back out. I typically do this 2 or 3 times after each dump, and in the case when I'm winterizing the trailer, I'll do this about 6 or 8 times just to make sure I get out anything in the tank. Now next, one thing you might want to do, you don't necessarily have to do it after every black or gray tank dump, is to use a black tank wand, which goes down through your RV's toilet like this. Again, you want to make sure you connect this to a non-potable water hose and not your drinking hose. What this does, this provides another jet of water that shoots down into your RV's black tank, and again, it helps remove any paper or solids that might be stuck to the side of the tank. I usually do this as well right as I'm winterizing the trailer, just to make sure that I get out anything as much as possible as I can out of our RV's gray and black tank. Now just a reminder, we have a 2021 Intech Sol Horizon where we have a combined gray and black tank. Most trailers have separate tanks, so if you have a trailer with a separate black tank, you will only need to do this in the black tank. I let this run for a few minutes just to make sure it's clearing off the top side of the black tank. Once I'm done with this, I turn off the valve on the wand, pull this out, then I go back out and turn off the water hose that was serving this wand. Again, if you connect everything properly, then you really shouldn't have any leaks or any major smells coming out of your RV's sewer hose. Once I'm done flushing the tank, I close the gray and black tank valve, as you can see here, and then turn on the hose fitting one more time just to flush the sewer hose one last time, just to make sure I'm clearing out anything. Okay, one thing I like to do once we have the sewage connection connected from the trailer to the sewage connection at the campsite, I like to put in a little black tank treatment, and we like to use Happy Campers. We've had a lot of good success with this. We'll put a link below. So with this, you just want to take one scoop, okay. You want to make sure there's a little bit of water in your toilet. Now that's doing that just because we just hooked up our domestic water connection to the trailer, so it's just forcing out any air in the lines.
So don't be worried about that.
Don't be worried about that. That's it. So once you have just a little bit of water in your toilet, just sprinkle this in lightly. It's kind of the consistency of baking powder, baking soda. And then that's it. Once it's out of the thing, then just flush it like you normally would. Let it settle, and then I like to flush it one more time. Let it run just for a couple seconds. That way it gets a little bit of water in there, and that'll help treat the tank while we're at the campsite.
Treat the tank for odors?
Odors, it'll start breaking down anything that's in there, such as toilet paper and solids, and it helps keep the odors down as well.
Okay, so we hope this helped you become more comfortable with going to a campsite and setting up your Sol Horizon, maybe for the first time ever. If you have any more questions, please put them in the comments below. You're probably not the only one that's going to have that exact same question, so we'd love to help you out. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel already, we're going to have a lot of tips and tricks specifically for an Intech Sol Horizon, so go ahead and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell if you always want to know when we're posting a new video. And if this has been helpful to you, please go ahead and hit the like button, the thumbs up button. Take care, everybody.